I found the conference so far really interesting. It's not something, an area in terms of expertise on health that I'm conversant with. So some of the language and some of the acronyms sometimes have been a bit baffling, and I'm playing a bit of catch up with that. But it's been really interesting, and what I'm seeing, and it comes from some of what Sir Michael Marmot was saying, is about breaking out of silos, having an holistic aspiration for health, and very much also about this shift from crisis management and symptom management to prevention as well. But there are some huge kind of, I'm also very mindful of, there's some really big policy challenges around redistribution, how we actually going to enact this and how's it going to be long term. I think it's important to be involved in research, particularly if you're that sort of hardly heard community, that your voice, your presence, your experiences get to shape people-shaped services. I think people-shaped solutions is what it's all about. And that's only ever going to be people-shaped if you are in the conversation. And I think the thing is, and I think UEA are really working hard on this via their generic civic UEA project and the Citizens Academy, about going where people actually are and starting where they're comfortable, and also working in genuine partnership so that people have what we call in community the warm handover. The warm handover is the idea that rather than coming in cold as an outsider with a name badge, you're introduced via someone who the group already knows. And that, in my case, it would be me, and introducing. We had Anna Varley come and talk to the Norwich Pit Stop members, for instance, and it was really interesting because we do a thing called the check-in, where we get to ask everybody in the room how they're doing, and she was involved in that and was very honest about how she was feeling at that point, and that just broke down those barriers. So that's a lot of it. That kind of, as I say, a warm handover. My involvement in contributing to research really came through the Civic UEA engagement process, where I think I was present at many of them, and from a self-interested point of view for MensCraft, we could see so much advantage in connecting with the UEA community. You have so many skills and resources that we don't necessarily have. But there's been an element of trust in terms of building that relationship. But I think in terms of also our members, for the MensCraft members, I feel that strongly that part of being heard is being valued. And so that people who are participant in research actually get something back from it. Not necessarily, sometimes people give out vouchers and all that, it's not necessarily that, it's just that thing about being valued. And also, I think a lot of people who have had, whether it be trauma or bad experiences one way or another, have a sense that they want to give back and contribute. And I think that involvement in citizen science and research is really valuable for that as well. I think that the researchers can engage with the public by going where they are. And I mean, for instance, I'll give you an example how MensCraft are working with a particular community who we weren't connecting with enough, and that is in Norwich, the refugee and asylum seeking community in Norwich. They weren't coming to us, so what we have done is we've set up some trauma-informed yoga practitioner who's gone into new routes and delivers it where people already are and already comfortable. And I think that's pretty much that model of actually active outreach, and also just, again, listening, genuinely listening in, and not just coming with a pre-formed research proposal, but actually doing that co-production and co-creation and shaping it around the interests, needs, psychology of the people you wish to work with. MensCraft is a charity based in Norfolk with a little toehold in Suffolk. We have a project in Lowestoft as well. And the overall aim of MensCraft really is about nurturing and empowering gentler men, gentler with themselves and gentler with others. It's very hard to define in some ways what a positive man looks like, but we know what they don't look like. They don't look like a toxic masculine Andrew Tate, for instance. So it's about really men who are maybe open to a whole range of traits that they recognise in themselves, some that maybe traditionally be seen as feminine traits around nurturing and being open, emotionally engaged, but also being comfortable with the whole range of who they are. Now, patriarchy doesn't allow that. It tells you traditionally you are one thing and women are another, and we feel that we are challenging that in what we do. We're really involved in equalities work. It's not about creating another separatist organisation. We believe that by doing the work that we're doing, we're helping to nurture better sons, better brothers, better partners. And it's really interesting actually that not all, but a lot of the referrals we get through are from women. It's from mothers and daughters and partners who are actually saying, you need to open up, you need to have help. In terms of the overall aim of what we're doing in MensCraft, in a practical sense, there's several areas. There's our project work around things like the Woodland Project, Outward Bound stuff. We do community theatre projects as well. We've also got the prevention and positive activities team that work with men at risk of suicide. And that risk is very high statistically. It's twice as high for men than women in Norfolk, but even higher in certain sectors like construction, for instance. And so that's very much a crisis management intervention. And then the project that I work in is called the Pit Stop Project, and it uses the analogy of men and cars. Some of us are old bangers like me, but we've got room on our parking lot for shiny young models. We're not that careful about the valeting quite often, or the oil change will put it off forever. But what we're really resistant to as men sometimes, I think culturally, is lifting that bonnet up and letting others see into the engine. And in MensCraft, that's what we're trying to encourage, lifting that bonnet up, letting others see in, and creating a pit crew so that we can look after ourselves and be looked after. And often the solutions to things are in community. Yes, it's important sometimes to do one-to-one, but often it's actually by doing that communally. And we do it for a range of activities. In terms of the pit stop, it ranges from kung fu to history walking to allotment gardening to soon community comic book creating. There's all manner of things that we're doing to put that into action. I think for Pit Stop, it really is about creating a sense of belonging. We do that very tangibly. We have a membership card, for instance, so guys have that in their hand, and that actually means they feel part of something. On the back of that, there is a definition of a pit stop, which was co-created with our Yarmouth and Norwich members. It's also been invested in. So, for instance, it will get you into any Norfolk Museum Service museum across the county for nothing. It'll get you 20% off in the feed cafes across the city. It'll get you cheap gym membership. So it's actually a conduit for people to actually invest in the members and show that they are valued. So it does lots of things. And that, I wouldn't underestimate the value of that sense of belonging. And that also the connection. I can think of people who came to the pit stop, particularly last year. One guy in particular came in shaking, and he hadn't been out of his home for the whole of lockdown. And that first step when you're coming and engaging in what was a social drop-in situation was so brave and so massive, but he was so warmly welcomed. And that's part of the culture we try and create around it, is that it's you'll be looked after, we will look after each other, you will be valued, we will listen, we will get alongside. And I think that alongside thing is really important for men as well, particularly. I think sometimes they need to be doing something to then open up. I think, is there like of an inclusive community for men? I think organically women probably culturally have tended to go for walks together to make that time for each other. I think also historically men have, myself included back in the day, I remember where I had a breakdown, and part of it was I lost my job and I'd over-invested in my work-based identity, and I hadn't valued the other forms of identity, my role as a father, as a partner, as a brother. And I think that women are far better at doing that and actually making those connections. And so I think because of that, when a society isn't working, you have to make it work. You have to provide opportunities, and that's kind of what we're doing via the whole range of activities that we offer. I think the changing role of men, I certainly think within the MensCraft and pit stop community, there's definite culture change. One of the things I see from particularly professionals coming in for the first time to particularly our pit stop social, our drop-in, is when we do our check-in, is they're quite amazed in a good way by the emotional honesty and that men are prepared to share there. And I suppose I was talking today about the way that we've got these activities, but perhaps not the most meaningful, but the most impactful thing we do in some ways is a thing called the Mindful Movement course, which is a 10-week program where the guy at the heart of it, the people who are delivering are really important because they often are the ones who are modelling a behaviour. And Paul was a Royal Marine who had PTSD, got in a whole world of trouble, served a long jail sentence as a result of this, but realised during that he had to change, had to put himself back together. And he just realised he hadn't been true to himself. And this course, he's a qualified gym instructor, so we do some kind of restorative movement. We also do things like breathing techniques and meditation, but what he's absolutely fantastic about as well is working with a group to get us to shift our relationship with ourselves, because at the end of the day, if we are to be healthy and to thrive, we have to learn to love ourselves. And culturally in British society, saying that doesn't go down very easily because it's seen as, who do you think you are, loving yourself? Well, actually, no. It's about loving and looking after yourself. It's only by looking after yourself and valuing yourself you can genuinely look after and value other people. And one of the practical ways he does that is through a thing called eulogy. So we get in the group to write our own eulogy. Despite the fact we're still alive, it can be the impact you feel you have made, but it can also be the impact you wish to make. And it gets you to really reflect about who you want to be and what difference you wish to make.